So let's talk about what happens when one of the most powerful drug lords in the world gets taken out. And more importantly, how that one single event can plunge an entire nation into absolute chaos.
Picture this. 1 minute, things are normal. The next, the country is gripped by tension. You've got buses and cars burning on major highways, sending thick black smoke curling into the sky.
Airports are in total panic, with travelers literally running for cover. Meanwhile, in the cities, everything just shuts down. Shops are shuttered and people are terrified to even step outside their homes.
And all of this widespread violence, this fear, it all traces back to a single military operation. An operation that targeted just one man. So who was he? And why did his death ignite such an insane firestorm?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the chaos on the ground. Then, we'll get into the man at the center of it all, Mencho. We'll walk through the takedown and the cartel's crazy response, put it all into the bigger context of this cycle of violence, and finally ask, what happens next?
The fallout was, well, immediate and just brutal. As soon as the operation was over, gunmen from the cartel hit back. And they hit back hard. They attacked cities across multiple states, set up roadblocks. They basically brought the country to a standstill. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Forget the big picture for a second. This is the reality for everyday people. It's a fear that just paralyzes your life, where something as simple as going to the store becomes a life or death decision. So let's talk about the man whose death kicked all of this off. Who exactly was Mencho?
All right, his full name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, but to the world, he was just Mencho. He was the head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG for short, an organization that became infamous for its extreme violence and incredible power.
Now, check out this number, $15 million. A bounty that high from the U.S. government, that's not just for some wanted criminal. That tells you he was seen as a global threat, right up there with the most notorious terrorists in the world. And here's why Washington was so worried. His cartel was accused of being one of the main suppliers for the American drug market. We're talking about flooding the streets with cocaine, heroin, and especially the incredibly deadly synthetic opioid, fentanyl.
And this chart really shows you the cartel's explosive growth. It started out as just a small regional gang around 2009, but it just metastasized, spreading its influence across at least 21 Mexican states. It became an absolutely dominant and terrifying force. So let's get into the operation itself. This wasn't just a simple arrest. No, this was a full-on military assault designed to essentially decapitate the entire CJNG organization. And you better believe the backlash was just as intense.
Here's the play-by-play. On Sunday, the operation kicks off. Mencho gets wounded in a firefight with soldiers. But here's the thing. He doesn't die right there on the battlefield. He actually dies from his injuries while he's being airlifted to Mexico City. And almost the second that happens, the cartel's retaliation begins. And just look at the numbers here. They show you how deadly this confrontation really was. I mean, we're talking about dozens of people killed on both sides, 27 Mexican officials and 30 cartel members. The authorities even seized heavy weapons like rocket launchers. This was basically a miniature war.
And here's where you see this really stark contrast. On the ground, you have total chaos. Cities are on lockdown under a code red. But at the exact same time, you've got Mexico's president on TV telling people to remain calm and promising that everything is under control. I mean, can you imagine hearing that while your city is burning?
You know, as dramatic as this all is, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's actually part of a much larger and tragically predictable pattern in Mexico's long drug war. Because taking out one leader, well, it rarely ever ends the fight.
This quote from an expert really just hits the nail on the head. The war doesn't end. It just reorganizes. It's like cutting the head off a hydra. 2 more just grow back in its place. The organization itself survives. And this is pretty much what that reorganization looks like every single time. A powerful kingpin rises up, security forces eventually take them down. But that just creates a power vacuum, which leads to bloody infighting between all the smaller factions. And then, eventually, a new leader claws their way to the top, and the whole cycle just starts all over again. See, Mencho is just the latest name in a long, long line of these figures. From the Guadalajara cartel back in the 70s to the infamous reign of El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel, Mexico has seen these powerful drug lords rise and fall. And each time one falls, it just unleashes a new chapter of violence.
So that brings us to the big, pressing question. What happens now? El Mencho is gone, yeah, but the massive, violent organization he built is still there.
And this is really the key takeaway. The consensus among experts isn't relief. It's deep, deep concern. The power vacuum left by El Mencho isn't the end of the problem. It's very likely the beginning of a brand new and maybe even more violent fight for control of his empire. So we're left with this question, aren't we? Taking out a big target like El Mencho might feel like a victory, sure, but it does almost nothing to fix the system that creates men like him in the first place. Which raises the ultimate challenge. A leader is gone, but can this seemingly endless cycle of violence ever truly be broken?